Hello, everyone. Our topic for today is religion and other belief systems. Now, while discussing this topic, there are a couple of subtopics that we'd be taking into account. To name them, we'd initially speak about science and its relationship with the Enlightenment era. We'd move on and we'd speak about the open and closed belief systems. Then we'd criticize the idea that science is or is not an open system. We take this ahead and we speak about laboratory based studies of science that disapprove the idea that science is as open of a system as it is portrayed to be. We connect this with postmodernism, and then we move on and talk about the relationship between science and religion. This is important over here, which we connect further with ideology. While discussing ideology, we discuss Marxism. Now, religion and other belief systems. To begin with this topic, if we talk about the relationship between religion and other belief systems, to begin with, both science and religion, they are examples of a belief system. It's pretty important that we understand that both science and religion, they are examples of different belief systems. Now, when we use the term belief system, what does the word belief system over here mean? Any set of values that we carry, beliefs, what we believe in, right? So religion and science are examples of different belief systems. Now, what do these belief systems do? They make claims about the world. They try to explain how this world operates. They try to explain how this universe works. They try to explain, or they try to generate knowledge in a manner that helps individuals, that helps an ordinary man make more sense out of this world, right? Now, there are different belief systems that exist within a society. For now, we're discussing the relationship between religion and science. What has to be kept in mind over here at this point is that both science and religion, they're examples of different belief systems. Now, when we talk about science as a belief system, science typically earns higher status because of the methods it uses to generate knowledge. Now, when we talk about, or as we talk about scientific knowledge being generated, typically scientific knowledge is assumed to be objective because it is based on evidence. When we talk about scientific research that are typically conducted through laboratories or through controlled methods, the idea, the understanding over here is that this knowledge that is gathered through an apparently objective manner, this knowledge that is gathered in a way that it does not involve any sort of human biasness, this would eventually be of some or the other benefit to the humankind. For example, which it has been in many cases too. So, for example, if you speak about medical research, this has led to the eradication of illnesses such as smallpox or the control over leprosy, right? But the question that rises over here is science really that objective? One. Number two, the higher status that science typically gets. Does science deserve to get that higher status? Number three, is scientific knowledge genuinely superior to other sources of knowledge and beliefs in society? Now, through this particular unit, through this particular topic, we talk about contrasting views of science and we question some of the knowledge claims of science. Now, we'd question some of the knowledge claims of science. What does it mean when we say we'd question some of the knowledge claims of science? Now, when we use the term knowledge claims, we're talking about how science claims to be holding monopoly over truth, how science claims that whatever scientific knowledge we gather eventually is free from any sort of biasness, eventually is free from any sort of objectivity. Now, this topic explores the relationship between scientific and religious belief systems. It also examines religion and science as examples of different ideologies. Now, taking this topic ahead, we'd initially speak about science and enlightenment. Science and enlightenment. When we speak about enlightenment, what does the word enlightenment over here mean? Many of you would already be aware, when we use the term enlightenment, we are referring to a range of scientific, social, and philosophical beliefs that developed in the Western Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, a range of different beliefs. What sort of beliefs are we talking about? Scientific beliefs, social beliefs, philosophical beliefs, right? A range of beliefs that developed in the Western Europe back in the 17th and the 18th century. Today, as I speak, it's the 21st century today, right? So, a range of scientific, social, and philosophical beliefs that developed in the Western Europe in the 17th and 18th century. We use the word enlightenment to refer to them. Enlightenment thinking rejected belief in the supernatural and in superstition as ways of understanding the world. Now, let us remind ourselves, we're all aware that a couple of centuries back, people were more superstitious. The belief people held about supernatural entities was a lot more than it is today. Now, when we talk about the Enlightenment era, as this Enlightenment era developed, as a range of different scientific, social, and philosophical beliefs, they started gaining popularity. People started rejecting. People started showing rejection towards their pre-existing supernatural beliefs. People started showing rejection towards their pre-existing superstitious beliefs, because this Enlightenment era, this the Enlightenment ideas through the during the Enlightenment era, these Enlightenment eras, these Enlightenment ideas, they promised rationality, they promised logic, they promised providing answers to question that could be backed through evidence. Right now, whereas when we speak about supernatural or superstitious beliefs, they rely more on an individual's personal experience. They rely more on an individual's personal faith. They rely more on faith. Yeah. Now, Enlightenment thinking is seen as the foundation of modernity, a phase in human history during which trust was placed in scientific views of the world, right? A phase in human history during which trust was placed in scientific views instead of superstitious and supernatural views that people held. For example, it was believed that humankind could use scientific knowledge to bring about progress, improve people's lives, fight disease, and tackle natural disasters. So, summing it up, when we speak about this Enlightenment era, the Enlightenment era is, or enlightenment in itself, it's a term that refers to a range of beliefs being developed, that was scientific beliefs, that were social beliefs, and that were philosophical beliefs. Now, after or during this Enlightenment era, or rather say because of this Enlightenment era, individuals started showing disagreement. They started showing a disbelief in supernatural entities, in superstition, because science, through the Enlightenment era, during the Enlightenment era, science promised them logic. Science was open. Apparently, science was open to be challenged. Scientific beliefs could be questioned, unlike supernatural beliefs. And there are many people who also believe that it was during this Enlightenment era that humankind actually put scientific knowledge to use through scientific progress. This Enlightenment era is actually connected with modernity. Right now, bring about progress, improve people's lives, fight diseases, and tackle natural disasters. So we just spoke about the science, the relationship between science and enlightenment. Let's take this ahead and connect this with a topic that is open and closed belief systems. Open and closed belief systems. Now, it is pretty important that we understand that both science and religion, their source of knowledge and beliefs, however, they differ in some important respects as well. Science is a belief system. I'm sure you do understand this by now. Religion is a belief system. I'm sure you do understand this by now. So, we're talking about both science and religion being sources of knowledge, them both being different beliefs and them differing in certain aspects as well. Some approaches distinguish between an open belief system and a closed belief system. Now, what is the difference between an open belief system and a closed belief system? Now, when we speak about an open belief system, the general understanding is that a particular belief system that is open to being questioned, that is open to being challenged, that is open to be raised concerns about. However, in contrast, when we use the word closed belief systems, what do we mean? When we use the word closed belief systems, we talk about belief systems that are uh, that do not allow you to question them, that do not allow themselves to be challenged, right? So the difference between an open belief system and a closed belief system, an open belief system is a belief system that allows being questioned. The closed belief system is a belief system that does not allow being questioned, to put it in a simplistic manner. Robin Horton, for example, argues that science is an open system. Now, according to Horton in 1993, science is an open belief system. Now, why is this that Horton in 1993 claims that science is an open belief system? Science operates in an open environment and is characterized by questioning, testing, and revising ideas. So, number one, why is it that science is being referred to as an open system? Because it operates in an open environment. Number two, because it is characterized by being questioned. Number three, you use testing while collecting data. And it is open to the idea of revision as well. So, according to Robin Horton, science operates in an open environment. You can question things in science, you can test things in science, and science also allows you or gives you an option of revision of ideas. As a result, science is constantly developing. By contrast, according to Horton, again, he suggests that closed systems of ideas such as religion. Do you see how Horton is referring to religious beliefs as the closed system? Now, based on the definition of what a closed system is like, a closed system, remember when I said it does not provide you with an opportunity to question. Through a closed system, you're not allowed to raise any concern about anything. So, according to Horton, science is an open belief system, religion is a closed belief system. Let me repeat, according to Horton in 1993, science is an open belief system and religion is a closed belief system. As religion is are not open to criticism or an alternative view, consequently, religion is conservative and does not modify its ideas over time. Now, science does allow revision of ideas, according to Horton. However, religion does not allow any sort of revision of ideas. We spoke about two contrasting views over here, this versus this, right? Now, taking this ahead, Horton argues, however, that religion and magic are in some respects similar to science. Now, the first thing that I want you all to keep in mind is, according to Horton, science is an open system, religion is a closed system. Nonetheless, according to Horton again, in some respects, right? Let me repeat, in some respects, there is similarity between religion, magic, and science. What is the similarity over here? According to Horton, each of them tries to understand how the world operates. Both science and religion, they try to understand how the world operates in order to control the world for human purposes, right? Now, according to Horton, again, I'm recalling the name over and over again so that you guys learn it. Now, according to Horton, science and religion both, they try to understand the world. Why do they try to understand the world? They try to understand the world so that they could be able to control the world. They could be able to control the world to benefit, to apparently benefit humans. However, as much as Horton is advocating the idea that there is similarity between religion and science, there are certain critiques who disagree to this claim as well. Now, critiques disagree. They argue that religion and magic are fundamentally different from science. For example, scientific propositions are testable, whereas religious beliefs are based on faith. Now, again, a contrasting view. You could test scientific beliefs, you are not allowed to test religious beliefs, right? The truth claims of religion cannot be tested by rational procedures. According to, now this is backed up by Wilson in the year 1966 as well. According to Wilson, the truth claims of religion, they cannot be tested by rational procedures. Truth claims of religion cannot be tested by rational procedures. Unlike non scientific beliefs, science enables people to explain, predict, and control the world, right? So, we're talking about contrasting elements over here. We're talking about a comparison between religion and science. According to Wilson, scientific ideas do not allow you to test them, right? Now, unlike scientific belief systems, unlike non-scientific belief systems, that is religion, science enables to people to explain, to predict, and to control the world. It can also confirm its explanations in terms of practical results. For example, by eradicating diseases or predicting when a volcano can erupt, religion, however, is unable to confirm its explanations in this way. So 2 points that I'd like to pick up from here. Number one, the testing part, the idea that scientific beliefs can be tested. Number two, the idea that scientific beliefs are being put into practical work, as well as to how science has worked towards making predictions, helped individuals understand about the world, and through that they through the scientific knowledge that individuals hold today, you can predict the eruption of a volcano. You could try to eradicate a particular disease as well. Now, we just spoke about open and closed belief systems. We spoke about Horton over here, and we spoke about Wilson. Now we'd move on and we'd speak about Karl Popper. Do not confuse this with Karl Marx. We're talking about Karl Popper over here. Now, Karl Popper came up with the idea of falsification. I'll just explain you what falsification is. However, I want you to keep in mind that we'd refer to Popper's claims made in 1959, 1974, and as late as 2002 as well. So, starting off with Karl Popper. Karl Popper argued that science is an open belief system, right? Just like Horton, according to Karl Popper, science is an open belief system too. I'll just show it to you over here. Popper believes science is an open system. So was the case with Horton, right? So these both same. They're same in terms of believing that science is an open belief system. So Popper argued that science is an open belief system. Scientists put forward statements and test them systematically by observation and experiments. Scientific theories are open to testing by peers as well. So we are talking about how Popper is justifying his claim about science being an open system. However, Popper argued that it is impossible to verify a theory, right? Now, as much as Popper is trying to advocate the idea that science is an open belief system, Popper is pretty careful when he claims that it is impossible to verify a particular theory. Now, according to Popper, like I had said, Popper came up with the idea of falsification. What exactly is this idea of falsification here? Now, when we speak about falsification, according to Popper, a scientist or a scientific theory, a scientist, when they come up with a theory, they should try to falsify it, right? When a scientist comes up with a theory, usually what we see is we see scientists trying their level best to try to prove themselves right. However, according to Popper, this should not be done. According to Popper, scientists should try to prove themselves wrong instead of proving themselves right, right? The idea, the word falsification over here. According to Popper, try falsifying your theories, right? A scientist should try falsifying his or her theories, because guess what? If you succeed in falsifying your theories, you were never right. However, if you do not succeed in falsifying your theory, you could be considered to be correct for that particular time. For the time being, you correct. You not you because according to Popper, absolute truth or scientific knowledge cannot claim that it can have absolute truth. According to Popper, anything that is true today has the possibility of being proven wrong tomorrow. So Popper again believes it is impossible to verify a theory. In his view, all scientific knowledge is provisional. This word provisional over here matters. All scientific knowledge is provisional, or in other words, it could be said to be true for that particular time being rather than certain or true for all time. So according to Popper, in 1959, Popper claims that science is an open system. The first thing that I'd want you to keep in mind. In 1974, Popper claims that scientific theories are impossible to verify. All sort of scientific knowledge is just provisional, or in other words, they are seen to be true for that particular time, rather than being considered to be absolute, considered to be certain for all times, right? Now, according to Popper, scientific knowledge is distinctive because it is not absolute or sacred truth, right? Now, Popper further tries to clarify. According to Popper, scientific knowledge is seen to be distinctive because it is not seen as being absolute or sacred truth. You do realize, if people start seeing science as absolute, if people start seeing science as sacred, they wouldn't question it, right? And if you stop questioning science, there is no room left for improvement, right? So according to Popper, scientific knowledge is not absolute. Scientific knowledge cannot always be 100% verified, and scientific knowledge is not to be seen as absolute or sacred sort of knowledge, right? You could always question and test scientific knowledge. By contrast, with non-scientific thoughts such as religion or magic, explanations are not tested. Do you see the connection between science and religion over here? Popper argued that subjective experiences or strong feelings of conviction cannot be decided by science. So over here, in 2002, Popper is trying to differentiate between scientific beliefs and religious beliefs. According to Popper, scientific beliefs, based on the idea that scientific beliefs are not based on 100% truth, they can be tested, they can be verified. You could test them over and over again. However, when you speak about religious beliefs are based on subjective experiences. Religious beliefs are based on strong feelings of conviction, right? Now, taking this ahead, someone may be completely convinced of the truth of something, but this conviction cannot be seen as an objective scientific statement, right? Now, if we exemplify this, if we talk about someone who's religious, right? Now, someone who's religious may be completely convinced of the truth of something, but this conviction that they hold, this cannot be seen as an objective scientific statement. Objective is something that is free from bias. It is not something that is based on evidence. It is objective. No, objective knowledge is actually scientific knowledge, right? Objective, or the idea that objective knowledge is scientific knowledge, right? If it cannot be tested, so someone may be completely convinced of the truth of something, but this conviction cannot be seen as an objective scientific statement if it cannot be tested. So according to Popper, if religious convictions cannot be tested, you cannot assume that they're objective. You cannot assume that they're free from bias. For example, statements such as God exists, like we believe La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we believe in the existence of God, Alhamdulillah, being Muslims. For example, statements such as God exists are not scientific because they cannot be tested or falsified. A religion is an article of faith. We don't need to test this. This is based on our personal convictions. This is based on our personal experiences. So statements like these, they cannot be tested or falsified. Scientific statements must be open to testing, falsification, criticism, and revision, right? So according to Popper, in a nutshell, we spoke about Popper's view put forward in 1959, the idea that science is an open system. In 1974, the idea that scientific knowledge is provisional, and the idea put forward in 2002 about how Popper argues that subjective experiences or strong feelings of conviction cannot be decided by science. And over here, he's referring to religious ideas. So, my dear, we just spoke about science and the Enlightenment era. We spoke about open and closed belief systems, and we spoke about Karl Popper. Let's quickly take this ahead and talk about the critical views of science as an open system. Now, we saw how Horton was referring to science as an open system. We saw how Popper was referring to science as an open system, right? However, we talk about a few ideas that disagree that disagree that science is actually an open system. Now, critical views of science as an open system. Sociologists and philosophers now question how far science is an open system. This suggests that scientific knowledge may not be as trustworthy as usually it is assumed to be. So typically when we talk about scientific knowledge, the idea is that scientific knowledge is trustworthy. The idea is that scientific knowledge is testable. The idea is that scientific knowledge is objective. The idea is that scientific knowledge is free from bias, prejudice, and distortion. However, the the subtopic that we discuss ahead would be about how we should be wary, how should be cautious about scientific ideas, because they might not be as trustworthy as they apparently seem to be like. Now, taking this ahead, Thomas Kuhn and paradigm shift. Before we talk about Kuhn, let's talk about what a paradigm is. Now, what does the word paradigm actually mean? When we use the word paradigm, a paradigm is a set of ideas, any set of ideas that people typically believe in, any set of ideas that people typically believe in, which might not always be true. Now, for instance, when you talk about scientific paradigms, during every era, every epoch, every century, there's always been scientific ideas or scientific paradigms that scientists show agreement towards, right? They're so convinced about those ideas being correct that they do not even test them, right? Scientific paradigms, a paradigm or set of belief, a set of ideas that in this context, right, in this context, that scientists see to be true, scientists see them to be true to such an extent that they do not even bother testing them, right? Now, Kuhn challenges the view that scientific discovery is based on rational and critical inquiry. People He saw science as a closed system of ideas and argued. So Kuhn saw science as a closed system, right? Now, according to Kuhn, he challenges the view that scientific discovery is based on rationality and critical inquiry. According to him, unlike Horton and Popper, Kuhn believes that science is actually a closed system of ideas, and he argues that progress in science is neither linear nor gradual. Science is committed to a particular paradigm. What is a paradigm? A set of beliefs shared by a group of scientists. Kuhn did not agree that scientists are completely objective, or they accept or reject a paradigm on the basis of evidence alone. So, according to Kuhn, if I put it in a simplistic manner, according to Kuhn, scientists are not as objective as they are typically seen to be. One. Number two, according to Kuhn, when people talk about science, they are sort of convinced with the idea, people are sort of convinced with the idea that scientific knowledge would be based on objective work. Scientific knowledge would be based on evidence alone. Now, Kuhn sets out to disapprove this. According to Kuhn, scientists are not completely objective. They do not always accept or reject a particular paradigm on the basis of evidence alone, right? So, for example, they may ignore any evidence that contradicts a paradigm that resists new ideas. Now, do you know what? When we talk about the scientific paradigms, so what happens is when scientists, I'm just trying to exemplify this and make this easier for you to understand. According to Cohen, during every era, there is a scientific paradigm. Scientists assume that that paradigm is correct. They do not test it. Instead of assuming that that particular paradigm is correct, scientists should actually be testing it according to Cohn, right? So if there's anything that they find, right, while conducting a research, according to Cohn, if scientists come across something that does not go in line with the paradigm that they were following, they might as well simply ignore it, right? So in reality, they shouldn't, right? If you are, while conducting a research, if you come across something that is not going in line with what typically everyone believes in, right, you should stand up, you should raise a concern, you should question that paradigm. However, according to Kuhn, that does not happen. Instead of raising a concern, instead of raising a voice about that their concern, instead of showing the world that the paradigm that is being followed at that particular time might not be correct, they just shush away, they just ignore any sort of evidence that contradicts that particular paradigm. Now, change in scientific knowledge comes about why the replacement of a scientific paradigm by another during a scientific revolution. Now, to explain this to you further, Kuhn is referring to a scientific revolution. According to Kuhn, yes, there are paradigmatic shifts that are experienced. For instance, if we talk about the shift from the Newtonian physics to the ideas that were put forward by Einstein, they were done through a scientific revolution, right? So changes in scientific knowledge comes about why the replacement of one scientific paradigm by another during a scientific revolution. For instance, the shift from Newtonian mechanisms to Einsteinian relativity can be seen as an example of a paradigmatic shift. A move from classical to modern physics involves a radical change in the way that many scientists viewed the physical world. So, there, according to Kuhn, what has to be kept in mind? According to Kuhn, scientific knowledge is not based on objective uh, evidence. According to him, scientists continue to follow a particular paradigm till there's a paradigmatic shift, till there's a scientific revolution, right? Now, which he thinks makes science a closed system and not an open system. Now, let's take this ahead and talk about laboratory-based studies that further support the idea that was put forward by Thomas Kuhn, right? Initially, we'd speak about Michael Lynch. Michael Lynch is was a biologist, right? Now, when we speak about Michael Lynch, Michael Lynch, right? Michael Lynch in 1983. Okay, before we proceed, we're talking about laboratory-based studies of science that support Cohen's claims about how scientific ideas are not as objective as people think they are, right? Now, over the last 50 years, traditional views about science have been challenged. One area of scrutiny is the practice of science, the way science is being practiced, one area of scrutiny. The way scientific knowledge is manufactured or constructed inside laboratories is being questioned here, right? Now, taking this ahead, Michael Lynch. Michael Lynch conducted a research in a psychobiological laboratory, and his findings suggest that scientists may be less objective than they claim. Now, if I explain this to you real quick, and then we just read through this so that again you are I'm let me remind you all, I'm doing it through the book so that you start reading. Remember, sociology is a subject, requires a lot of reading, requires a lot of writing, right? All of this could be done through pointers. All of this could be done in lesser than half of the amount of time it is taking us to do this. Nonetheless, I'm continuing to do this through the book because I want you all to get yourself familiarized with the book, right? Sociology as a subject requires a lot of reading. The more books you read it from, the better idea you'd have. So moving on, Michael Lynch was a scientist who was conducting a research on his fellow scientists who was studying rat brain. They were studying rat brain, would be written down over here somewhere, who was studying rat brain in a psychobiological laboratory. I repeat, Michael Lynch was a scientist who was trying to conduct a research on his fellow scientists who was studying rat brain in a psychobiological laboratory in 1983. Lynch concludes that scientists may be less objective than they claim to be. Scientists may be less objective than they claim to be, right? Now, why is this so? According to Lynch, scientists, while they were conducting the research, the parts of rat brain or the features of rat brain that they could easily explain, they did, right? According to Lynch, the parts of rat brain that scientists could explain, they did. However, there were certain parts of rat brain that they couldn't explain, right? And these parts of rat brain that they couldn't explain, instead of accepting that they could not explain those parts, they simply called it an error in the research. I'll repeat, according to Michael Lynch, scientists are not as objective as they claim to be. while his own research in 1983 in a psychobiological laboratory, what Lynch found out was that the parts of rat brain that scientists could not provide an explanation for, instead of being honest and accepting that they could not explain that particular part of rat brain, they started referring to it as an anomaly. They started referring to it as an error in the research. So sometimes unexplained features were found in the photographs. There was much discussion in the laboratory about whether these features were artifacts rather than real features of the rat brains. They were frequently viewed as errors in the production of the photographs or slides. For example, some were believed to result from scratching of the specimen when it was being sliced. In reaching their conclusion, the scientists were influenced by their existing theories and the types of feature they were looking for and expected to find. I'll highlight this one as well. In reaching their conclusion, the scientists were influenced by their existing theories and the types of feature that they were looking for and expecting to find. So, while concluding, instead of accepting that there were certain paths that they had come across which they could not explain, their conclusions eventually were influenced by the existing theories that they held, and they were influenced by what they expected to find, right? If the visible marks on the slide or photograph did not fit the scientist theories of how rat brains function, they were much more likely to be dismissed as errors. The scientists' interpretation of the data were guided by their own theories. So we just spoke about how Michael Lynch, who conducted a research in 1983 in a psychobiological laboratory while he was studying fellow scientists who were studying rat brain in a laboratory, rat brain, right? Now, according to this example that we discussed, right? If you remember Popper, the gentleman who came up with the idea of falsification, far from Popper's methodology in striving to falsify their theories, the scientists tried to use the evidence to confirm them. Now, remember when Popper had said, if you come up with a scientific theory, try to falsify your scientific theory, try to prove your theory wrong, because if you keep on trying to prove yourself right or your theory right, you might intentionally or otherwise miss on a lot of things that you shouldn't, right? So far from, or rather say, instead of following what Popper had advocated, the idea of falsification, or instead of falsifying their theories, these scientists, they were trying to look for evidence that kept on confirming them. Whenever they came across evidence that did not support their claim, they simply ignored it or called it an error in the research. Many scientists may be reluctant to dismiss perhaps years of research because a single piece of evidence does not support the theory that they have developed. So imagine you're a scientist, you've worked all your life through a particular paradigm, you worked all your life or quite a lot of years of your life on a particular theory, and you all of a sudden come across something that does not pretty much go in line with with the paradigm that you worked on. Don't you think you might be reluctant raising a concern? Because you know for a fact, if you raise a concern now, all the previous work that you've done over years or maybe decades, which might as well have gained you popularity, which might as well have gained you the position, the status, or the prestige that you hold today, it might be taken away. So, according to Lynch, instead of accepting that they cannot, in scientists, instead of being objective, instead of accepting that a particular piece of work does not fit into the theories they have worked on, they might as well simply ignore it. Now, in a nutshell, according to Lynch, scientists are not as objective as they claim they are. Scientists are not as objective as people typically see them to be. Now, pretty much in line with Lynch, we'd move on and speak about Woolger. Woolger in 1988. Woolger is skeptical about the knowledge claims of science. He's interested in what goes on in science on a daily basis and what scientists do in laboratories. He argues that now he's interested in what goes on in science on a daily basis and what scientists actually do in laboratories. He argues that science is not, in fact, distinct from other forms of activity or knowledge production. There is nothing inherently special about the scientific methods and in practice, scientists do not necessarily stick to it. In Woolger's view, science activities are constructive. That is, in that scientific facts are constructed in laboratories rather than descriptive. Now, according to Woolger, pretty much in line or in support with the idea that was put forward by Thomas Kuhn, which was showed support by Lynch. According to Woolger, scientific facts are not based on evidence. According to Woolger, scientific facts are actually constructed in laboratories, which might not be as objective as they claim. Instead, they'd be subjective. Taking this quickly ahead, we'd move on and we'd speak about postmodernism and science. Now, when we speak about postmodernism, as I typically say, there are four things that I'd want everyone to know of, to keep in mind when we talk about the postmodernist perspective. These 4 points that I typically use to explain students, these 4 points do not, they're not uh, postmodernism, they do not include everything about postmodernism, but nonetheless, if you understand these 4 points, they'd make your life considerably easier. So when we talk about postmodernism, 4 points, the first one, postmodernist era, or an era that comes after modernism, right? Okay, so first point, postmodernists believe there's been technological advancement. One, there's been technological advancement today. Number two, according to postmodernist era, postmodernism believe there's a lot more choice today than we ever did, right? Number three, postmodernists are against meta narrative. A meta narrative, a single piece of truth. They believe there is, they talk about the impossibility of a single piece of truth providing an explanation for the world. And the fourth one, postmodernists, they believe absolute truth does not exist. There were 4 points that I mentioned over here. The first one, postmodernists believe that there's been technological advancement today. Number two, they believe that there's a lot of choice today as compared to the past. Number three, postmodernists believe they're against meta narratives. Postmodernists are against meta narratives. Number four, postmodernists believe absolute knowledge does not exist. Taking this ahead, most postmodernists challenge the objectivity and truth of all belief systems. In their view, truth is not something that exists out there waiting to be discovered through the use of objective scientific knowledge. Instead, truth is created or constructed by people. Woof. According to postmodernists, remember when I said absolute truth does not exist? According to postmodernists, truth is created, truth is constructed by people. Postmodernists argue that people no longer place their trust unquestioningly in science or scientists. People increasingly question the power of science to solve global problems such as famine or natural disasters and to produce a better world. In fact, science and technology can have negative side effects. For example, cars and aeroplanes continue to contribute to air pollution and global warming. Rather than providing truth, the truth claims of science have been challenged by skeptical philosophers and historians of science. Now, let me take you back and connect this with the Enlightenment era. If you remember, when we were discussing the Enlightenment era, the idea was people had started disagreeing to or showing a disbelief towards superstitious values that they held, and they were more inclined, they were more attracted towards scientific ideas because science sounded pretty promising. Because science, the development of science in the Western world during the 17th and the 18th century, science sounded so convincing, science sounded so promising. Science kept on talking about bringing the problems of the world to an end. But you do realize today in this 21st century, as I speak, even today, there are so many people, there are hundreds and thousands of people who die out of hunger, the famine. Has science been able to fix this? No, it has not. One. Number two, science promised making the world a better place through technological advancement. Wait, hasn't that actually led to a global climatic change, which hasn't this actually resulted in pollution? Hasn't this resulted in global warming? Right. Number three, science kept on promising to bring the health related concerns to an end. Has that happened? Not as yet. and talk about technological advancement. These, instead of putting this technological advancement to the right use, don't we all know how today hundreds and thousands of people are being killed? Isn't it through the through the invention of these weapons of mass destruction? So according to, I mean, I could go on and on. I just want to stick to this, connected to this. So postmodernists, they no longer place their trust unquestioningly in science or scientists. So do you see a shift over here? You do realize initially, the pre-enlightenment era, people were more religious, and after this pre-enlightenment era, enlightenment era came, where people started showing a lot of trust in science because of its rationality, because of its logic, because it allowed you to question. And today, in this postmodernist era, according to many postmodernists, people are no longer, I repeat, they're no longer placing their trust unquestioningly in science or scientists, because the promises science had once made, they haven't really come up to be true. Right now, taking this ahead, Jean-Francois Lyotard argued that science and religions rest on meta narratives. Now we connecting meta narratives, we connecting postmodernism to this particular topic. This topic is about religion and other belief systems, right? We're talking about religion and religious beliefs and scientific beliefs and the connection they hold. So Lyotard in 1984 argued that science and religions rest on meta-narratives, or a grand theory, or a big story, or a myth that gives meaning to other narrative or stories. A meta-narrative, a theory that gives meaning to other theories or other stories, right? A bigger truth. According to Lyotard again, who is a postmodernist, both science and religion, they are meta narratives. Remember when I said according to Lyotard, or rather, sorry, when I said postmodernists, they're against meta narratives. So according to Lyotard, both science and religion, they are actually meta narratives. They're actually meta narratives, right? So for example, science provides a meta narrative or a big story about evolution by natural selection. Meta narratives give a sense of purpose to scientific endeavor and a sense of direction to social life. They suggest that humans can progress through science towards defeating ignorance and oppression, and that science can help humans to conquer nature, which has not really happened. So, Lyotard associated postmodernism with the decline of scientific, religious, political, and other meta narratives. According to Lyotard, a postmodernist being a postmodernist, according to Lyotard, today, as we speak in this postmodernist era, scientific knowledge is not as popular as it once used to be. Religious knowledge is not as popular as it once used to be, or political affiliation, for the matter of fact. But for now, we just interested in scientific and religious knowledge or scientific or religious beliefs. So Lyotard associated postmodernism with the decline of scientific, religious, political, and other meta narratives. An incredulity towards meta narratives develops in postmodern societies. People no longer put their faith in these big, all embracing theories about how the world works. So, according to Lyotard, the amount of popularity that these meta narratives, such as science and religion, as well, according to Lyotard, that it's no longer true that the extent to which people showed their belief and their unquestioning belief, rather, in religion is to be found today. So people no longer put their faith in these big, all-embracing theories about how the world works. They become skeptical that any set of beliefs can provide a means of understanding and resolving the problems of humanity. They no longer believe that reason can conquer superstition. So remember, a shift, my dear, a shift from superstitious beliefs to scientific beliefs. However, today, the third phase over here, according to Lyotard, even the extent to which people showed uh, belief or faith in science is being questioned today. However, Lyotard is not free from criticism too. According to Lyotard, the people who've criticized Lyotard, they point out, however, that religion and other meta narratives are still powerful. Number one, Lyotard can say whatever he wants to say, but the people who criticize him, they believe religious, and other meta narratives, they still seem to be powerful in many parts of the world, if not all. They all argue that although Lyotard dismissed the possibility of objective knowledge, acha, now one more thing. Remember, Lyotard is a postmodernist, and postmodernists believe objective truth does not exist, absolute truth does not exist, right? Now, when postmodernists, they believe that absolute truth does not exist, when postmodernists believe that absolute truth does not exist, do you realize this entire phrase that absolute truth does not exist, this in other words means Lyotard is asking you to not believe in anyone else but in him, right? Do you realize how postmodernists are advocating the idea that individuals, that us as individuals, we shouldn't really be believing in anyone but them? The question is why. If you're saying, I'm just putting it in a simplistic manner, if you're saying I shouldn't be believing in anything anyone says, guess what? You're amongst those anyone as well. If you're advocating the idea that absolute truth does not exist, if you're advocating the idea that absolute truth does not exist, in that case, the truth or the claims that you making, they are not meant to be true as well then, right? So they also argue that although Lyotard dismissed the possibility of objective knowledge, he nonetheless claimed to have accurately described key changes in society, such as an increased skepticism about science. However, if objective knowledge is not possible, then there's no reason to believe that Lyotard's claim about science is any more true than claims made by sociologists who disagree with them. So if whatever Lyotard just said is true, no, if wait, if if we stick to what postmodernists typical beliefs are about absolute truth not existing, in that case we have no reason to agree to what Lyotard just said as well. However, if objective knowledge is not possible, then there's no reason to believe that Lyotard's claim about science is any more true than claims made by sociologists who disagree with them. So putting it in a simplistic manner, a typical criticism that postmodernists face: if postmodernists ask you to not believe in anyone, any theory at all, then there's no reason for anyone to be agreeing to or to be believing postmodernist theories as well. So yeah, this took us quite a lot of time. Let's quickly move on and talk about the relationship between science and religion. So, the relationship between science and religion. There are many sociological commentators who believe that science and religion, they are both compatible. However, there are others who believe that they're not compatible. Instead, they're competing. Do not get confused between these terms. The first term over here is compatible. The second one is competing with each other, or in other words, not being compatible. Okay. Now, some commentators see science and religion as compatible belief systems that can coexist without tension, Others see them as competing with each other in terms of how they explain the world. In this view, they're incompatible because their ideas clash with each other. They cannot coexist. Oops, sorry. They cannot coexist. Instead, they clash with each other. So initially we talk about science and religion being compatible, right? Initially we talk about science and religion being compatible. There are two key theorists that we discuss over here, Stephen Jay Gould, and we talk about Steve Bruce. Gould in 1999 and Bruce in 2011. So science and religion being compatible, and then we'd compare it with claims where we talk about science and religion being incompatible, okay? So this is what we're comparing here, okay? Now, taking this ahead, science and religion can be seen as compatible for several reasons, including the following. Number one, according to Gould, who was a scientist who supported evolutionary theories of biology. Nevertheless, he argued that there's no conflict between science and religion. Gould argued that there's no conflict between science and religion because they're concerned with different aspects of human life and needs. According to Stephen Jay Gould, human beings do not need to be confused between science and religion. They can both coexist because they're both catering to different aspects of human lives. They're catering to different aspects of human needs. Gould claims that One type of human need is the need to understand the facts about how nature works. That is science, right? However, humans also have a drive to give meaning to their own lives and to find a basis for their moral views. This is religious belief. So they, both science and religion, they cater to different aspects of human life. They cater to different aspects of human needs, and which is why Gold believes that they can coexist in harmony. And there's no reason for us to believe that science and religion, they're not compatible. Number two, another piece of support for the claim that both science and religions can coexist and they're compatible with each other. Bruce argues that science and religion can coexist quite easily. Not many people have a great deal of knowledge about scientific methods and discoveries. In his view, science is unlikely to disapprove religious faith if that faith is backed up with and supported by a strong religious community. If scientific beliefs are according to Steve Bruce, science is unlikely to disapprove religious faith if that religious faith is backed up by or supported by a strong religious community, which I'm sure you all, especially the people in Pakistan, can relate to very well, right? Now, number two, let's move on and talk about contrasting view, talk about how science and religion, they're both incompatible. An alternative view is that science and religions are fundamentally incompatible. Dawkins in 2006 argues that belief in supernatural gods is simply a delusion completely at odds with scientific beliefs. So Dawkins is rejecting the idea that science and religion are compatible. According to Dawkins, scientific beliefs are not compatible with religious beliefs. He rejects Gold's view that religion can provide answers to questions which science cannot. Although he accepts that science may not have answers to questions about the meaning of life, he sees no reason why people should be seen as offering any expertise in such areas, right? Religious people should be seen as offering any sort of expertise towards answering questions about life that science cannot answer to. Dawkins argues that religion is based on faith. In his view, faith is an inadequate and possibly harmful basis for believing in something. Astaghfirullah. It involves believing without question despite the lack of evidence to support it. This can lead, for example, to violent acts being carried out on religious grounds. So we spoke about three key theorists over here. We spoke about Stephen Jay Gould. We spoke about Steve Bruce, and we spoke about Dawkins. So Gold and Bruce, they believe that science and religion, they're both compatible. However, Dawkins believes that they're not compatible. Taking this ahead, linking it with ideology, a sprinkle of Marxism maybe, and then we're done. Now, an ideology refers to a set of shared ideas, beliefs, or values that provide a way of interpreting the world. This we've studied 100 times earlier. This can result in a partial, false, or distorted view of reality. In practice, an ideology offers, or in practice, often ideology legitimizes or justifies the position and actions of powerful groups in society, such as the ruling class or men. Religion can be seen as an ideology too. So feminists believe it is the patriarchal ideology. However, Marxists believe it is the ideology of the rich, the elite, the powerful, the bourgeois. Marxist idea of religion as an ideology. Marxists focus on the ideology of the ruling class. In this sense, ideology is viewed as a viewpoint that distorts reality and justifies the position of a particular group. Marxists see ruling class ideology as a set of beliefs and values that express the interests of the bourgeois in capitalist society. Ruling class ideology legitimizes existing power relationships in society. This is nothing new. All of this has been discussed 10 times earlier while discussing Marxism and under several other topics as well. Karl Marx saw religion as an ideology in that religious beliefs uphold the interests of the ruling class and justify inequalities of wealth and power. This can be seen in Christian teachings as well, as such as blessed are the meek, those who are gentle and unwilling to disagree with others, and the meek shall inherit the world. Now, these two lines, the idea that this idea comes from Christianity. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Religious beliefs also make the social order appear natural, acceptable, and inevitable. Marxists link religion to false class consciousness in that religious ideas keep the subject class from recognizing its own interests and disguise the true extent of its exploitation. So keeping people under an impression that the life they're living is the life God wants them to live. This keeps them away from recognizing that they're being exploited, right? Which disguises the exploitation they hold in the name of religion. And this further ends up justifying the status quo, or the way things are, the current situation. By justifying the status quo, religion distorts reality. False class consciousness blinds members of the subject class to their true situation and their real interests. In this way, religion diverts people's attention from the real source of the oppression and helps to maintain the power of the ruling class. So you could also use the idea of ideology, or you could also use the concept of ideology to understand religion and other belief systems, how powerful groups in the society use ideology as a mechanism to control the way people think. Controlling the way people think, controlling what people believe in makes you or helps you control the way they behave. So yeah, this brings this topic to an end, and hopefully it has been worth it. Uh, I'd, uh, uh, I'd want you all to read through this thoroughly, and we shall discuss a question where you could use the content that we have studied today in our lesson. And for now, this is pretty much it. Take good care of yourselves. Stay happy, healthy, safe, and protected. Stay humble. Spread positivity, spread smiles, and Allah Hafiz.